Leann Andrews, and I'm an assistant professor at Penn State in the Department of Landscape Architecture. I lead a design activism and research program called the Interaction Labs, based in Iquitos, Peru, which is a city in the Amazon rainforest. And it's specifically looking at vulnerable communities, one of which is an amphibious floating slum community that's right on the edge of a city. It's very much influenced by the urban forces of the city. It's about 500,000 people who live in that city, and the very, very strong ecological forces of the Amazon rainforest. And it's this really interesting space that's halfway between the urban and the very biodiverse, rich rural. And this is a program that is not only just analyzing what it's like to live there from a human and ecological health standpoint, but it also is looking at how can you design for this very vulnerable population who's living in this slum community, how you can design with nature, how you can design to honor indigenous practices and to design to improve their health, and in turn the health of the animals and the ecosystem that they are living in. We always bring in graduate students every year to engage in that critical thinking, both from an academic side, from where you're sitting right here at Penn State, but also from a practical side. We actually put in interventions and then research the outcomes of that, and we're following the health of the community over time. So if anyone is interested in learning more about this type of research, working with the medical professions and public health and things like that, I would be very open to talk to graduate students who would be interested in engaging in that type of work. Sure. So 2020 really brought about a realization to us all that health and well-being is ingrained in every aspect of every part of our lives. And that has always been the core of my work. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that unpeels. And it's really, we've just started the conversation. And I think that, I have been exploring the ideas of disease, and especially human animal transmitted diseases, this concept called One Health, and also looking at things on a planetary health standpoint of how we're all connected, um, both locally and also the global ecosystem. And I'm curious to see how this begins to infiltrate into design approaches, um, and not just in my work, but in the general practice. As we begin to understand that ecosystems are and protecting our ecosystems, and thinking about human and animal interactions in a different way, it really has a it has an actual impact. This pandemic was caused from local issues, and we don't know all of the pieces of the source of the problem, but we know that coronaviruses and zoonotic diseases in general are very often urbanization problems, that we are expanding our urban areas, climate is changing, animals are moving, people and animals are mixing in a way that they have never before. And so while this is incredibly unnerving and scary time that we're living in right now, it probably will not be the last pandemic that arises. And to think about what is the role that landscape architects can play in these really big, really important One Health situations. And I think we do have a role in that. And so I'm exploring ways of exploring One Health down in in the lab, in the interaction labs in Peru, as much as I can. But I'm really curious to see how that starts to expand to other landscapes and ideas beyond the Amazon rainforest, which is pretty big in itself. Sure. So I actually think that we're also in an interesting era where academia or research is intermingling with practice and influencing. There's a cross influence both coming from academia to practice and practice to academia, and I think that it's a really great thing that's happening. So a lot of firms are opening their own research and development sections within their firm to start to explore different, ways to push the profession, push technology, push the way of designing and assessment of their projects, and using academia as a model and a partner in that process. And then the same aspect, the role of academia is really to train you all into going into the profession. And I am seeing more and more that the profession isn't really just one spine, it is multiple spines, and we really need to start expanding the way that we think about what it means to be in the profession. And that I think I find incredibly fascinating. It's we always talk about alternative career paths. Well, I don't know that they're really alternative anymore. I think we now have different ways of approaching landscape architecture in practice, and we need to continue to nurture those aspects across, the public, the private, nonprofit sector, and the different models that are involved, including things like design activism and as real paths that move forward, because there's been plenty of really great firms that have emerged over the last couple of years that are doing these type of work. One thing that I think is really important is that whatever career path you choose, whether it be in advocacy or in a traditional firm, or you have your own practice building technology or whatever, you still have the same, there's still a core, there's still a base set of technical skills that will benefit you. And that, I think, is the first part of grad school, is really getting that technical base down. And depending on whether you enter with a previous degree in design or not, it is mastering those base set of skills so that when you enter the world in whatever aspect of the profession, that you are doing it in a responsible way, that you're doing it in a technically advanced way, and that you are doing it so that that is not an area where you're struggling in practice, so that you can push the limits, because you can't push the limits if you're still like trying to figure out how to grade or something like that. So that is the first part of grad school. The second part of grad school, I'm a firm believer in formulating your own stance and really figuring out how you view the world. And in order to do that, you need to learn how to critically analyze the world around you, whether it be readings or built work or practitioners or whatever. The second part of grad school is really having an opinion about where things are right now, what has been done in the past, what is being done in the present, and what you think is missing that you can contribute in the future. And being confident in that. And it takes some time to nurture that confidence. And I think that my career path has is will look very different than the opportunities that graduate students have nowadays. But I entered the profession. I worked in three kind of traditional firm practices. One was an engineering firm, one was an architecture and landscape firm, and another one was a design build firm. I got that solid base. I knew how to do all of the base set of skills in landscape architecture. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to have my own stance, went back to grad school, and then started refining that, started getting influenced by other professions, including those folks in global health, which were the most influential in my career trajectory. And then after, formulating your own stance, having that solid base, I then felt like I could launch into my career and really kind of figure out what is missing, what does the world need, what is missing, what can I contribute. And for me, that was in design activism and in research, and kind of pairing those two aspects together. And that's how that worked for me.
I think you kind of hinted on it, some of it there.
Yeah. Well, I could think about that some more. Yeah, to be a successful graduate student, you really you need to, absorb all of the technical skills that come your way, but you also need to critically look at the world around you and formulate your own stance. And that stance is not necessarily a stance that you'll have for the rest of your life, but it's a stance that you have now and that will be a stepping stone to where it is that you want to go, where it is that you think the profession or the public needs to go in order to um, do whatever it is that you want to do.